Welcome, dear friends. You're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and this is your daily breakdown of events on the Ukrainian front. Today's program is packed. Changes have been recorded on several key directions simultaneously: Dobropolye and Slavyansk. From all other sections of the line of contact, noteworthy news continues to arrive as well, and we'll cover the most important developments. But before we dive in, I want to do what I always do and sincerely ask each of you: if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so right now. Every subscription is real, tangible support that helps the channel grow and reach new audiences. If you've been watching our episodes regularly but still haven't subscribed, now is the time. To everyone who has already shown their support, a heartfelt thank you. So, let's get into it. Yes, the pace of advance on the front has slowed noticeably. We covered this in detail in yesterday's episode, talking about the reasons behind the slowdown and when we might expect things to pick up again. Nevertheless, the front is not standing still. Events are unfolding, and their nature is mixed. Encouraging in some places, troubling in others. Zaporizhzhia. Direction: Stepnohirsk. Let's start with the bad news. The urban-type settlement of Stepnohirsk, not yet updated on the maps, has become the subject of footage circulating online that deserves separate attention. The video shows what appears to be Ukrainian special forces operating right in the center of the settlement. At first glance, this might seem unremarkable for a war zone. But the key detail is this: the personnel in that unit are clearly not Ukrainian. These are foreign mercenaries, and the pattern is broader than just this one case. Back in Kupyansk, when the enemy attempted to retake the city, there were no Ukrainians among the attacking fighters either. Those were identified as Colombian nationals. Now Stepnohirsk, and again, foreigners, nationality not yet fully confirmed. It's beginning to feel as though, in the not-too-distant future, Russian armed forces will find themselves fighting virtually anyone on this front. Anyone except Ukrainian citizens. As for the specific operational situation, uncertainty remains. It is not possible to determine the exact time the footage was recorded, so a question mark stays in place for now. That said, it cannot be ruled out that Russian forces have genuinely lost full control over this settlement. If that is the case, it is a serious loss. The fight for Stepnohirsk was long and brutal. The settlement has developed infrastructure, including multi-story residential buildings, which give a defending force significant tactical advantages. Losing that will create additional difficulties for Russian units in this sector. But before drawing any firm conclusions, we will wait for additional confirmed materials from the Russian side. Orikhiv direction: Eastern Group Force. On the Orikhiv sector from the south, there are no significant changes to report. From the eastern flank, however, where the Eastern Group Force is operating, the picture is entirely different. Fighting continues without pause on the distant approaches to Huliaipol. Simultaneously, Ukrainian forces are launching intensive attacks to the north in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, striking eastward from the Voskreshenska area. The intensity of these attacks, and I want to emphasize this, is exceptionally high. The AFU command is clearly not counting its losses. Footage has emerged online documenting confirmed enemy personnel eliminations, one after another, dozens of killed and wounded. But what has been achieved? As of March, absolutely nothing. The front on this sector has not moved a single meter since Russian forces reached the railway line. In Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, positions are equally stable. Berezov and Ternov remain under Russian control. Just a few days ago, Verbov was fully cleared, with a captured AFU fighter taken prisoner from the basement of one of the buildings. Let me give you concrete numbers to make the scale of events clear. Over the first 2 weeks of March, in the area of responsibility of the Eastern Group Force, spanning both the northern flank in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast and the western sector in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, the enemy suffered the following equipment losses: 12 artillery pieces, 3 infantry fighting vehicles, 10 armored personnel carriers, 32 other armored combat vehicles, and 119 automobiles and quad bikes. On top of that, an entire infantry battalion has been effectively destroyed. And these were not barely armed conscripts dragged off the street and handed a rifle. This was Azov, a unit that Ukrainian military circles themselves regard as elite. According to various reports, the irreversible losses among Azov fighters over this period exceeded 340 personnel. The key question: what did they actually achieve with these sacrifices? In February, the AFU did have some results to show, recapturing settlements, advancing a total of more than 60 square kilometers. March, by contrast, has been an absolute blank. Not a meter gained. Equipment burned, fighters lost, and the result, zero. The only argument one could make in defense of these actions is that the Eastern Group Force spent March largely on the defensive rather than advancing. But that is a questionable achievement at such a price. In any case, these are their decisions and their responsibility. Let's move on. Ivanivka and Novopavlivka area. Yesterday, an expansion of the Russian-controlled zone was confirmed here. A section of the line of contact passed under Russian control. Today, video footage arrived. A Russian forward position on the northern bank of the Vovcha River came under fire from Ukrainian forces. Expansion of Russian presence in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast has also been confirmed. New positions recorded in the vicinity of Ivanivka. It should be noted that most of this territory had already been marked as under Russian control previously. Today's materials simply provide additional confirmation. The same applies to another sector. That area was already under Russian control, with Ukrainian positions located somewhat further away. The precise picture around Novopavlivka is still forming, but based on current data, the greater part of the settlement already appears to be under Russian control. Hryshyn. On Hryshyn, I can be brief and unequivocal. It's done. The settlement is fully under Russian control. Although the map has not yet been updated, several fighters from the Hryshyn area have confirmed it directly. The clearing operation is complete. The small remnant of AFU positions, literally a handful of streets, has been eliminated by Russian units. This was entirely predictable. Holding a couple of blocks in full encirclement, with everything else already lost, is not a realistic proposition. The logical next step is crossing the Hryshenka River and advancing toward Novoalexandrivka, Dobropolye direction. Bilitska. Prolonged positional fighting continues here. The front remains grinding and sticky, with no decisive breakthrough in sight. The theoretical possibility of taking the city before the end of March still exists, but it becomes less and less likely with each passing day. Kostiantynivka. Yesterday, Russian forces conducted a concentrated bombardment of the city's outskirts and approaches, aimed at suppressing enemy strongpoints and easing the task of the assault infantry. The strike was focused on the multi-story residential districts, precisely where the AFU's most heavily fortified defensive positions are concentrated. On the ground, fighting continues. Clashes are ongoing for Ilyanivka. Attempts are being made to establish a foothold in the industrial zone along Miroshnichenko Street, and Russian units are steadily pushing the enemy out of the private residential sector, gradually expanding their zone of control. On timelines, my forecast remains unchanged. Kostiantynivka will most likely not fall before June, approximately by the end of that month. I don't see an earlier outcome at this stage, though in active combat conditions, anything can shift. Slavyansk direction, Fedorivka 2nd and surroundings, significant changes have been recorded here. The section of the line of contact around Fedorivka 2nd has passed under full Russian control. All forested areas in this district have been cleared. Simultaneously, reports indicate that Russian units are expanding their zone of control to the north of the settlement. Active clearing operations are currently underway in forested terrain, where the AFU had previously constructed fortified positions and trenches. The work ahead is substantial, but forward momentum continues. Holubivka and Minkivka. Fresh video footage has arrived from Holubivka. I had previously marked all of this territory as under Russian control, but a portion of observers had questioned whether Holubivka specifically had actually been taken. The picture has now clarified. Russian sources report Russian forces advanced 400 meters north of Minkivka and established new positions in the central part of Holubivka. A forward position in the residential district came under AFU fire, which in itself constitutes indirect but meaningful confirmation of Russian presence in the very center of the settlement. Russia's Ministry of Defense had previously declared that Holubivka, Minkivka and Pryvillia had all passed fully under Russian control. Today's materials confirm this. The entire indicated territory is under Russian control, and the front line in this area has stabilized. Nikiforivka area. Reports are arriving of an expansion of the Russian-controlled zone. I had previously made updates to the map for this sector, but today's data suggests the actual extent of the advance is considerably wider. As soon as confirming information arrives, map updates will be made without delay. Direction, Lyman. From this sector, reports indicate active work by Russian FPV units and artillery in the eastern part of Lyman. However, no measurable linear advance has been recorded here for several weeks. Previously, Russian forward positions were located at several key points. Today they form a single line encompassing the eastern part of the settlement. Russian units are methodically straightening their line and expanding the zone of control. Nothing new from Drobyshchev, but as a reminder, that settlement has long been under Russian control. As soon as additional confirmations arrive, I'll report back. Kupyansk direction. Here again, the picture is contradictory. Ukrainian sources insist that both Kupyansk and Kupyansk-Vuzlovyi are fully under AFU control. This is incorrect. This information does not correspond to reality. The greater part of Kupyansk-Vuzlovyi remains under Russian control, or, in the case of certain central districts, sits in a grey zone where the situation remains unstable. The latest information at my disposal indicates that Russian forces are holding the majority of the settlement. The same applies to Kupyansk itself. The front line runs along high-rise buildings, and Russian positions there are subjected to regular strikes by artillery, FPV drones, and even HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems. Nevertheless, the Russian defense is holding. Claims of full AFU control over Kupyansk do not withstand scrutiny against the actual available data. Vovchansk and Liptsy directions. On both sectors, the front line is effectively frozen. In the areas around Vovchansky Khutori, Hravska, and Semenivka, active skirmishing continues but without visible advancement. On the Liptsy sector, the situation is identical, an active drone war on both sides, regular artillery exchanges, but the front line has not shifted for several months. Sumy direction, Hrabivsky and Ryasna. From this region, news is arriving of an expansion of Russian control in the vicinity of Hrabivsky and a gradual push in the direction of Ryazan. Previously received data had already recorded this advance. Russian units entered the forested areas to the east of Ryazan. At that time, no assault activity against the settlement itself was noted. Today, the situation is evolving, the advance is continuing, and if the current momentum is maintained, the beginning of next week could realistically see the start of a direct assault on Ryazna itself. Alexiivka and Andreevka area. Here, Russian units are improving their tactical positions, expanding their zone of control, and striking AFU positions in the vicinity of Pisarivka, Malokorchakovka, Korchakovka, and Krapovshchina. That said, no measurable linear advance has been recorded in this area for several months. FPV units and artillery operate daily on both sides. The front here remains stable for now. Political agenda. Now, briefly but pointedly, what is happening beyond the battlefield? The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has dealt a blow to the global energy system, whose full scale continues to unfold. The primary casualties have been America's Asian allies. Japan is already being forced to tap into its strategic petroleum reserves, a resource that, at current rates of consumption, will not last long. Europe, choking under the combined weight of an energy crisis and trade wars, is experiencing accelerated deindustrialization. Volkswagen has announced plans for sweeping workforce reductions numbering in the tens of thousands, and Porsche's financial results have collapsed to catastrophic levels. Against this backdrop, Donald Trump's rhetoric has undergone a striking transformation. Not long ago, he was campaigning on promises of lower fuel prices as one of his signature pledges. Now he openly states that expensive oil is beneficial to American producers. In practice, Trump has abandoned any intention of forcibly unblocking the Strait of Hormuz, effectively abandoning Washington's Asian partners to navigate the crisis on their own. America's position is further complicated by a specific legacy issue. The Biden administration had significantly drawn down the country's strategic petroleum reserve, stripping the current government of its primary tool for stabilizing domestic prices. and prices continue to climb. In this environment, the clear beneficiary has been China, which proactively assembled massive strategic oil stockpiles and secured its own energy independence, while its competitors find themselves scrambling. Within America itself, the political temperature is rising sharply. Trump's policy reversal has opened deep fractures inside the Republican Party. MAGA movement supporters, with Tucker Carlson among the most prominent voices, together with the broader conservative media ecosystem, are constructing a new information reality, actively backing the non-interventionist course and methodically marginalizing the traditional hawkish establishment. Growing divisions in Congress are creating a genuine threat of a government shutdown and budget paralysis. And all of this unfolds against the backdrop of a looming recession, one that strips Washington of the fiscal flexibility it would need to act both at home and on the world stage. That concludes today's breakdown. Thank you to everyone who watched through to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's the single most valuable thing you can do to support what we're building here. Until next time.